When we jump in, take a little break here. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Happy Sunday to you all. Father Miroslav, perfect timing. Father Miro, if you'll come forward to the front. The man I was waiting for, so please. He's not done praying, so Father Miro, please come forward. We're gonna make you pray for your lunch. So this is a wonderful occasion to be together. This is our second Polish cultural celebration. Of course, there are many more than two around this parish. If you're around long enough, every season, every month certainly has reasons to celebrate. But this series of three cultural celebrations was an inspiration that I had as a way to bridge to a broader audience some of the wonderful treasures of our Polish tradition. Today, the focus is going to be on Polish literature and poetry, something that I am eager to learn more about. We'll have an opportunity to introduce Dr. Kemp, who began last month with the first session focused on the Polish nation as a defender of Europe and of freedom. It was a wonderful occasion on the Feast of John Paul II, and now we're back for more. So I want to thank the ladies who have prepared the soup. They are the regulars who are part of our soup dinners, soup suppers throughout the Lenten season. Very grateful to Anne Wanzel and the other ladies who are helping, most of whom are all active in the Women's Rosary Guild, the CCW Rosary Guild here at Holy Cross. So let's bow our heads and pray for God's blessing upon our meal, upon this celebration, and then we'll allow Michael Sobieski and Sam Backman to continue regaling us with some wonderful music, and then we'll have some more specifically performance pieces as we move into the program today. So let's bow our heads and pray. I'll pray first in English and then ask Father Miroslav to bless our food in Polish. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you. This is the day that you have made. We rejoice and are glad in it. Today the Church remembers Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, and we know that in our parish we're so blessed with the patronage of Saint Hedwig of Silesia, the Duchess of Silesia, and we know that these saints were family among themselves. Saint Elizabeth, the niece of Saint Hedwig. Lord, we ask your blessing upon our food, upon our fellowship. In this month of November, we always remember our beloved dead, and we also remember the saints who call us to join them in eternal glory. We ask your blessing upon our food as we pray. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which we're about to receive from thy bounty. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Szczęść Boże wszystkim. Przed naszym spożywaniem posiłku również się pomodlimy w naszym języku, ponieważ to nasze spotkanie też będzie odnośnie polskości. Pobłogosław Pani Boże nas, ten posiłek, tych, którzy go przygotowali, i naucz nas dzielić się chlebem i radością ze wszystkimi przez Chrystusa Pana naszego. Amen. W imię Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego. Amen. Smacznego.
At this point, we're going to begin dismissing the tables. I'll have Natalie Knapp be the one dismissing tables. So look very hungry and look very friendly, and she'll be sure to get you into the line. And we'll continue to enjoy our time together. Thank you and God bless. Smacznego.
You asked if I was reading or writing. know you're reading. There's no question about it. I've seen your house.
Thanks so much. Really well done. So before the wedding, we had to bring down all the names for everybody coming to the wedding, and we had them on a giant table. And we like just really get around and like so like just have that's so true. wanted to say to everyone, as you're enjoying so much this beautiful day, there is more soup, and the ladies in the kitchen have asked me to let you know that you can come for some more soup. We may even have some soup to take home at the end, but if you'd like a little bit more, or certainly get a piece of cake as well, as we're preparing in the next few minutes to begin with some introductions. Thank you all, and enjoy.
Okay, one more.
Tu 30 ciasteczko? 30 ciastko?
I remember that you could see Natalie there So one of the things I discovered about Natalie, she loves books. I think in the same way that I do. So when we were moving in, she like set up residence with all of our books and bookshelves and afterwards, like that was something for her as well. And she was like during like a nap.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can have your attention. Well, I wound up as the MC yet again. I was hoping to find someone else that might be able to lead us through today, but we're so grateful for so many who have come. For many of you, I know this is the regular time you're here in Colby for coffee and cake, so we hope that you enjoyed a little bit extra the food that was here. If anyone came and didn't have a chance to make an offering, a donation, we certainly would appreciate you making a donation to help us bring events like this in the future, both celebrating the musical traditions, but also bringing wonderful speakers like Dr. Kemp here. So there are baskets on each of the tables here on this side, as well as in the back of the hall. You can drop. We ask for about $15 per person, but certainly grateful for anything you could offer. On this table here, just behind the pillar, you'll also see a number of beautiful artifacts, Polish art, embroidery, other things that have been brought from Poland. I believe those are all pacem things. That's going to be donations for the church, but we're grateful to Pacem for those donations. So please help yourself to any of those plates or artifacts or art. And again, grateful for any of the contributions you would make there that will come to benefit Holy Cross Parish. There also are some Polish books, a few of them left, I think, from Polish Saturday School. It's amazing around here. If you pay attention long enough, you'll see some wonderful Polish things. So just invite you to consider any of those opportunities. On October 22nd, the Feast of John Paul II, we had a wonderful Polish cultural celebration on the feast day of St. John Paul II. And it was a beautiful time to be together with music and with the first lecture in the series. One of the things that I did on that occasion is share some words from John Paul II. And I intend to do the same this evening or this afternoon because John Paul II, what a beautiful embodiment of the Polish spirit he was. Many of you perhaps know that he was a poet. He was a poet as a young man, but he kept writing poetry through much of his life. I have a wonderful compilation of his poetry translated by Jerzy Piotrkiewicz, and it's called The Place Within, the Poetry of Pope John Paul II. I want to read two short poems that are really meditations that were written in St. Peter's Basilica. I recently had a chance to be in Rome and was praying for all of you. I prayed at St. John Paul II's tomb, but it was a beautiful opportunity to just ponder the events that great basilica has witnessed in all of the centuries of its life. There's lots of preparations for the Jubilee year, which are underway. And so these two poems came to mind, especially because I shared something with so many who were ordained in St. Peter's. I was ordained a deacon there. So I want to read first a poem called The Marble Floor, and I'm going to read it in an English translation, but there's also a wonderful poem called The Crypt that I'd like to read just after. So first, The Marble Floor. Our feet meet the earth in this place. There are so many walls, so many colonnades, yet we are not lost. If we find meaning and oneness, it is the floor that guides us. It joins the spaces of this great edifice and joins the spaces within us, who walk aware of our weakness and defect. Peter, you are the floor, that others may walk over you, not knowing where they go. You guide their steps so that spaces can be won in their eyes, and from them thought is born. You want to serve their feet that pass, as rock serves the hooves of sheep. The rock is a gigantic temple floor, the cross a pasture. It's one of the most evocative parts of a priestly ordination, or the ordination of a bishop for that matter, or a deacon, that there is a lying prostrate on the floor of a cathedral or basilica as the litany of saints is prayed over those to be ordained. So the beautiful image that John Paul has, and is in a certain way becoming the floor so that others can walk over. That's a beautiful image of ordained ministry in service of the people of God. The rock, a gigantic temple floor. Now the crypt. This reminds us certainly of the beautiful crypt of St. Peter's, where John Paul was laid to rest after his death. But it also reminds me of the wonderful crypt of Wawel Cathedral, where so many amazing people are laid to rest. Some of the royalty of Poland, but also many of the literary figures and important people, as well as, of course, those that died in the tragic airplane crash. So it's a very evocative place, but in the crypt of Wawel is an amazing chapel, which is called St. Leonard's Chapel, and that's the place where John Paul II offered his first Mass. So it's very evocative to think about a crypt that has so many stories that it tells. We must go below the marble floor with its generations of footsteps and drill through the rock to find the man trampled by hooves of sheep. They knew not whom they trampled, a passing man, the man who will never pass. The crypt speaks, I am bound to the world and besieged. The world is an army of exhausted soldiers who will not pull back. So just to whet the appetite, I know there's going to be more poetry shared this day. Very grateful for the opportunity to have these things in juxtaposition. Poetry and art, so much a part of our wonderful culture and tradition, and we're showcasing them here in this series. Is Dr. Sam Backman here? Not at the moment. He's soon on his way, so I'm going to keep talking for another few minutes. I think he's going in search of a charger for our recording camera. I want to just bring one more poet to the fore. I certainly am fairly new in my discovery and reading of Polish literature, unfortunately all in translation. I have here my copy of Pan Tadeusz that I have started. I haven't gotten very far into it, but I have really enjoyed certainly the novels and was very familiar with Quo Vadis before I arrived. But I've been trying to get into Adam Mickiewicz, who is, of course, always hanging. I like to think of that as kind of our poet's corner here in Colby Hall. Westminster Abbey has a poet's corner. We've got a little poet's corner with Adam Mickiewicz, the poet laureate of Poland. Such a profound figure. You pretty much in every city of Poland, you'll find a statue to Mickiewicz. And Adam Mickiewicz, of course, is our patron of our Saturday school. A number of the faculty, I don't see as many of the students. I saw some students, but they look like they've escaped. So maybe they're doing their studies for Saturday school next week. But it's a good thing. I do have one other poet that I'm familiar with, and he's probably my favorite Polish poet, just because I'm more familiar with his writing, and that's Czesław Miłosz. And I've really been able to appreciate his poetry. Sam is back, but I will regale you with two short poems from an edition called The Bells in Winter. I don't know a lot about his overall series of poetry and his literary output, but I find these poems very profound and very gut-wrenching. They're very heavy, like I know a lot of his poetry might be, but I have two, and they're really a juxtaposition. One is called A Felicitous Life, and the other is called The Fall. So I hope that none of these are in Dr. Kemp's presentation. I'm just reading a few of my poems as a way to whet your appetite for what's coming. So here we go. By the way, on the back of the book, there's a reference, a comment really about what happens when we read poetry in translation. It's not ever as good to read poetry in translation, but of course, for those of us that don't speak Polish, it's our only hope to be able to get into this. I have no hesitation in stating that Czesław Miłosz is one of the greatest poets of our time, perhaps the greatest, even if one strips his poems of the stylistic magnificence of his native Polish, which is what translation inevitably does, and reduces them to the naked subject matter, we find ourselves confronting a severe and relentless mind of such intensity that the only parallel one is able to think of is that of the biblical characters, most likely Job. That's quite a praise of Czesław Miłosz. First, a felicitous life. His age fell on years of abundant harvest. His old age fell on years of abundant harvest. There were no earthquakes, droughts, or floods. It seemed as if in the turning of the seasons, there gained in constancy. Stars waxed strong and the sun increased its light. Even in remote provinces, no war was waged. Generations grew up friendly to fellow men. The rational nature of man was not a subject of derision. It was bitter to say farewell to the earth so renewed. He was envious and ashamed of his doubt. Content that his lacerated memory would vanish with him. 2 days after his death, a hurricane razed the coasts. Smoke came from volcanoes inactive for 100 years. Lava sprawled over forests, vineyards, and towns. And war began with a battle on the islands. And then one more, the fall. The death of a man is like the fall of a mighty nation that had valiant armies, captains, and prophets, and wealthy ports and ships all over all the seas. But now it will not relieve any besieged city. It will not enter into any alliance, because its cities are empty, its population dispersed. Its land, once bringing harvest, is overgrown with thistles, its mission forgotten, its language lost, the dialect of a village high upon inaccessible mountains. Poetry does have a great power, and that's why we're spending time today reflecting on the poetry and the poets of Poland. Very grateful for the opportunity to do so as a kind of prelude, a kind of first course, you might say, into our venturing into Polish literature and poetry. We're so blessed to have the opportunity to welcome a wonderful guest musician, Maestro Michał Sobieski. He bears the name of a man that we spoke of course, last month, as we talked about Jan Sobieski III. But we're very grateful to welcome Michał Sobieski along with Dr. Sam Bachman to do some duets. I'm going to invite Sam, I think, if you wish, Sam, to just share a little bit of an introduction. And then I know you're going to have one performance piece at the beginning and then one after the lecture as well, as a way to kind of bookend this day with these wonderful arts. I'll invite Sam forward to the mic. Thank you.
As well. There's a certain sense in which, Father mentioned reading any great literary work in translation, of course, compromises to a degree some of the inherent meaning in what you're reading. You get sometimes the raw content, but some of the subtleties are lost. And while arguably one could say that if you're not raised in a certain folk tradition, you may not know the subtleties as well. But one of the beauties of this musical tradition of Poland is that I think it translates so well across cultures, just in terms of its raw appeal, that one need not be necessarily steeped in the culture itself to find great appeal in the music. Certainly, Friedrich Chopin, who naturalized as a Parisian citizen in his adulthood, never gave up on his Polish identity, and of course, like his Hungarian counterpart Franz Liszt, that was really part of the success of his music, is the way in which he integrated the raw folk elements. I'm really pleased to welcome Michał here, because Michał is a household name among musicians, especially in the Twin Cities. He was a violinist many years with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. He's been director of several local orchestras and has recently founded the Classical Music Project, an endeavor that brings orchestral music of all sorts to bear. When I met Michał about 10 years ago, I knew him as any violinist that played Brahms, Tchaikovsky, Bach. Fell in love with his Bach playing at an early age. But it wasn't really until getting to know him more recently that I realized his deep connection to the Polish folk tradition. And just yesterday we were discussing some of Michał's family history, which he'll be able to better inform you about. Namely, that both of his parents were ethnomusicologists. That is, people who in a in kind of an era of rapid urbanization and industrialization, sought to save the folk traditions from going into kind of oblivion or neglect. Michał tells the story of when his parents were visiting, or his parents would travel around Poland shortly after the wars and visit towns without any electricity and record some of the folk tradition there. That's really kind of an impossible thing to imagine in this day where we have TikTok, we have YouTube, and all of those things, as wonderful as they might be for transmitting information, can of course be detrimental to folk tradition, which is so deeply ensconced in this local cultivation. So that's what, for me, just rehearsing some of the pieces we're about to play with Michał has been such a delight, is just hearing his nuance, all the subtle nuances that someone who's simply a trained musician wouldn't understand, but somebody who's really breathed the folk tradition has. So please welcome Michał, and I don't know if you'd like to say a few words before we begin.
Microphone. By the way, did you hear me well playing with this microphone? I should be closer, farther from it.
No, it was good.
Was good?
Yes.
Okay, it's good to know. Well, we're starting. Okay. I can't tell if there's any reverb or anything, so I have to rely on you guys. We're starting this program about poetry with different kind of poetry, which is music, particularly music of 1800s, when the Romanticism was growing and existing actually. I am going to play several pieces today by Henryk. I am speaking in Polish. Henryk Wieniawski. It was a great virtuoso of 19th century. Italy, and all of us actually, but Italy first has Niccolo Paganini as a great virtuoso of all times. Well, we have Henryk Wieniawski, which was also a great player, and I study here. I came to the United States to study in University of Bloomington University's famous pedagogue, Mr. Joseph Gingold. He was already, in his 70s at least, when I studied with him, and he mentioned that he knew previous generation of teachers and musicians, which knew another generation of people which heard Wieniawski perform. Unfortunately, he died in 80s of 19th century, so he never was recorded. They didn't have recording at that time. But according to the people who heard him performing live, he was by far most interesting performer of his time. And also he was a composer which used Polish, similar like Chopin on the piano, on the violin, he used Polish influence of Polish folk music. They treated that music very differently. It's probably too little time to go into it. But I just will start with the Polish song, which incorporate some of different Polish characteristics of Polish folk music. Maybe I get aim that one. There's another piece by Wieniawski, which is called Dudziarz, means pipe player, bagpipe player. So imitates the bagpipe. Maybe I should do that.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you. And that's not the end of our music for today. We'll look forward to welcoming them back. But it is my privilege now to welcome back, by popular acclaim, Dr. Kemp, who's back for his second lecture in a series here at Holy Cross. Very grateful for the opportunity that I had to get to know Dr. Kemp as a student at the University of St. Thomas. And Dr. Kemp has just concluded his teaching career as he's entered happily into retirement. But I understand he's quite active and busy. I've heard he's been giving talks in a number of different places, and I know he has a number of interesting projects and scholarship that he's undertaking as well. He's, for a long time, had great interest in Polish things, and very grateful for his first lecture, and glad now to welcome him back on Poland and its poets, masterly works of the pen. Welcome, Dr. P. Everyone should have a packet of pages with translation. There are more available at the table if you missed that, but there is a handout for
One.
Okay. So,
Jeff is like, and that's the
that's fine.
he's like,
Okay, well, thank you all for its comment. And here's something. Well, rather said, shit, your today's talk is going to be off. What else? That's what was on portrait. Polish poet Cyprian Norby called the Covenant rainbows after the deluges of history. Well, that is a bit. Sorry, Nelson. These ones, those years. Okay, work well back standard. We'll just have it right here. Okay. Well, structure. We'll be GMs for morning. List. Polish poet Cyprian Norby called the Covenant rainbow after the deluges of history, and something to which man returns as a sorrowful child comes back to a patient mother. In my last lecture, I discussed a theme from Polish history. Even if the triumphs over the threats to Christendom, which were my topic, were not fighting deluges, they are also solid components of our history. We still must feel sorrow about the human cost to which most of those tragedies wasn't. Although in its broadest sense, the term art refers to all the products of human manufacture, so that agriculture and engineering are also arts. The narrower sense focuses on manufactured beauty. St. John Paul wrote that the element of beauty is deeply inscribed into human culture from the very beginning. In tonight's lecture, I want to turn to Poland's contribution to art, and in particular to literature, and more particularly yet to poetry. Indeed, in his recent letter on the role of literature in formation of priests, Pope Francis asked, how can we reach the core of cultures, ancient and new, if we're unfamiliar with, disregard, or dismiss their symbols, messages, artistic expressions, and the stories with which they have captured and evoked their loftiest ideals and aspirations, as well as their deepest sufferings, fears, and passions? How can we speak to the hearts of men and women if we ignore, set aside, or fail to appreciate the stories by which they sought to express and lay bare the drama of their lives experienced in novels and poems? That's strange, sounding. Important as it is to most, if not to every culture, literature plays a particularly important role in Poland, not least because of its contribution to maintaining the national identity when the Polish nation had been deprived of a state. Cyprian Norby, to whom I'll return shortly, conceded in the earlier poem, and lost a passage from poetry that I'll read, or on the handout. They took them in 820. Please add to them. If you look at the handout, read it, and I'll find out what's going on here. Okay, so there's a dual language there. In choosing the translations, or in some cases making my own, I focused on a poetic reading rather than a literal reading. So
It can goes on your roof and we both can see what you think. Big ones. No. You finished. Good. Let's see the therapist's choice. The people's hands were swollen with applause, but they were bored by poetry and cried for deeds, and high-browed handsome laurels sighed with branches on the scent of stormy wars. Narpi, nevertheless, also emphasized the contribution that literature can indeed must make in a later poem entitled Our Native Language. Begin with the thunderbolt, not with some thunderclaps. Those are just step horses with feasts and names. First digging. Words and thoughts will come later, perhaps. Let a foreign influence our language decays. When those words to the soldier, the poet did chide as he pondered his armory until it was spent. Neither broadsword nor arms, the poet replied, saves language like masterly works of the pen. We can take the decisions of the Nobel Prize Committee as just one indication of the quality of Polish letters over the last century and a quarter. Among the numerous prizes awarded to Poles over those years were 6 in literature. Of those 4 were awarded to prose writers, 3 of them ethnic poets. 2 of them Sienkiewicz in 1905, Władysław Remont in 1924, and Dr Kemp in 2018. The 4th, in 1978, was Isak Bashev's singer, who was born and raised in Poland and took life in Poland as his subject matter. Even though he wrote in Yiddish and emigrated to the United States in 1935. Yankiel, the patriotic Jewish innkeeper at Adam Mickiewicz's Pontadeus, who reappears in Joseph Conrad's short story, Prince Roman, would want to make sure that we include Singer in our list. In this, one might add, he would receive seconds from Joachim the Level, from Jan Matejko, and from Józef Pilsudski, as well as from St. John Port. Sienkiewicz wrote novels about Poland's history comparable to those which Sir Walter Scott wrote about Scotland, or James Fenimore Cooper about the United States. This most salient example of Sienkiewicz's trilogy, with Fire and Sword, The Deluge, and Pan Volodyaevsky, which is translated, I think, Pen Michael in the English version from one English translation, Fire in the Steppes and others. Anyway, this trilogy is a salient example of his work. For those content with a 1-volume sample and willing to forego any further connection with Poland, there is Quo Vadis, said in the Road of the Holy Christian Martyrs. Remont and Singer wrote about their own day, Poles in the late 19th century, Jews in the early 20th, respectively. The most recent war with the Kharkiv was controversial within Poland for reasons that need not take us here. Still, as Czesław Miłosz wrote in the introduction to his history of Polish literature has always been oriented more toward poetry in the theater than toward fiction. And Ludwig Levine and her contemporary poet in the book Contemporary Polish Poetry, 1925 to 75, wrote that poetry commands a special place in Polish culture, and a nation which has long been subject to the malevolent designs of powerful neighbors. Poetry is more than a highly developed art, providing a refined aesthetic experience for an elite readership. Since at least the Romantic era, Poland's great poets have professed a special calling, which is also a special burden, to speak to and for the nation in its times of agony and record its trials in their works. That love you. Indeed, 2 more prizes were given to Polish poets. To Miłosz himself in 1980, and to Wisława Szymborska in 1996. The prominence of poetry in Polish culture stands in some contrast with its place in our own. There seems to be an emblematic significance to a remark that Ralph Waldo Emerson, by then suffering from dementia, made to his daughter Ellen at Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's funeral. He said there, the gentleman we've just been burying was a sweet and beautiful soul. Couldn't forget his name. Mickiewicz was not only memorialized in statues throughout Poland, but is read in every store. His work is available in every bookstore. So, let's get started on particular poets. I want to begin with Kochanowski, so Renaissance poet, among the first poets to have written it in Polish rather than in Latin. David Welsh said of him that he had invented Polish poetry almost single-handed. Not much is known about his life, but this much we can say. He was born into a family with great literary interest and talent. After some 15 years as an itinerant scholar, he served for 10 years at court, for example, as secretary of King Zygmunt August, writing poetry as time allowed. In 1570, he retired to his estate at Czarnolas, near Lublin, where he devoted the rest of his life to writing. So there's a picture of the place. Since we look, my toil, my lords, and my gift here in behold, thy blessing rests upon me to the end. I give me those palaces that lend their marble walls of drapery of gold. Here let me dwell within my cider's nest, endowed with health, with conscience clear of stain, possessing little, causing none I pay, content until old age shall bring me rest. And Czarnolas has come to have, unique legendary connotations for Polish poetry, should we say, kind of like Hollywood has for American film. And if I'm out of twisting the Polish Czarnolas, it's not literally Hollywood, but the last part is what? Anyway, what else did Kochanowski write? His recasting of the Psalms into poetic Polish not only had a noteworthy influence on succeeding generations of Polish poets, but produced texts that were set to music and continue to be sung in Polish churches. Kochanowski's original poetry touches a wide range of themes. His work runs from the Polish midsummer state folk customs depicted in St. John's Eve to the classical theme of the dismissal of the Greek envoys on the eve of the Trojan War, and to the personal, when his contentment at Czarnolas was interrupted by the death of his two-year-old daughter, Ursula. That death led him to write a series of 19 laments. So I'll take a fragment, most of the first, and a fragment from the later one. Come, Heraclitus and Simonides, come with your weeping and sad elegies. Ye griefs and sorrows come from all the lands wherein ye sought it and wait upon your hands. Gather ye here within my house today and help me mourn my sweet. Gungetter may ungodly death has taken to his estate, leaving me on a sudden desolate. Tis so a serpent glides on some shoddy nest, and of the tiny nightingales possessed of its throat, till frenzied with her fear, the mother bird doth beat between them near, and strike the monster till it turns in gates to swallow her, and she but just escapes. 'Tis vain to weep, my friends, perchance will say, dear God, is idle like my fame then? Nay, seek the life sought. The up-thorns will prickly be. The life of man is not but vanity. Which were better than to seek relief in tears, or sternly strive to conquer grief? He sought consolation in this classic Stoic philosophy before finally finding it in Christian belief. So late in 1117, let my tears prolong their flow. Wisdom I most truly know hath no power to console. Only God can make me whole. The lament was a genre of venerable antiquity, but according to Poetic canons, it was supposed to have as its subject some person of great eminence. Kochanowski's laments did not. They lacked, thereby, Miłosz wrote, the necessary decorum. But then Miłosz added, perhaps that's the way masterpieces are created. The convention is at the same time preserved and broken. So let's move again to the 19th century. Historians of Polish literature labeled the mid-19th century, at least 1820 and 1860, as its age of Romanticism. What does that label mean? The question is much debated. Indeed, some critics, for example, A.O. Lovejoy and C.S. Lewis, have insisted that Romanticism is, to quote Lewis, a word of such varying senses that it has become useless and should be vanished from the vocabulary. The term is, however, unavoidable, as both critics recognized. Romanticism is not like a scientific movement offering a paradigmatic work, a model for others to follow. It's not like Newtonianism or Darwinism. Its unity is perhaps best seen in its reaction against something, against classicism or the Enlightenment, but without a clear conception of exactly what it's for. As a descriptive account of the commonalities of individual authors who vary in their selection and emphasis of generally common themes and concerns. We may partially alleviate the problem of definition by reliance on Lovejoy's comment that the Romanticism of one country may have little in common with that of another. There is, in fact, a plurality of Romanticisms. Then, without worrying about William Wordsworth or Lord Byron, we can just ask about Polish Romanticism. Historian Norman Davies said of it, unable to conceive their world in the rational, harmonious lines of the Enlightenment, Polish writers and artists turned instead to the exploration of the spirit, to the evocation of the inner nature of things. They were fascinated by folklore, by historic traditions, by medieval legends, by the supernatural, by the emotional extremes of ecstasy and agony, by human love and death, by heroes and heroines larger than life, by the call to freedom, and they added a specific Polish note of Catholic piety. In Poland, the romantic experience was particularly intense. Arguably, it has provided the largest single ingredient of modern Polish culture. The conditions which fostered it in the first place having continued in many respects to the present day, the romantic tradition still, he was writing in 1984, reigns supreme in the Polish mind. So that's Norman Davies. Literary historian Julian Krzyżanowski emphasized, however, that it has a universal as well as a national significance. Polish romantic literature became, for the Poles, a treasure house of national ideals cherished by one generation after another as a remembrance of heroic endeavors in the past as well as a promise of happier future. The most essential characteristic of the Polish romantic masterpieces is that although they were concerned with problems which historically and geographically were Polish, they also reached farther and dealt with questions appealing to the whole of the human race. Nothing. Historians typically identify a salient triad of Polish romantic bards, Don Szonkier, Adam Mickiewicz, Juliusz Słowacki, and Zygmunt Krasinski. To these 19th century poets, we must add at least Cyprian Narby, whom George Gubert described as the first Polish poet to realize that the romantic era had come to an end. Adding that Narby made a special effort to create a kind of realism which does not reject Romanticism in its entirety, for rather transcends it while incorporating certain elements of romantic consciousness. So, let's take a look at one. Mickiewicz. Born into a family of impoverished nobility at Nova Grudek in what's now Belarus in 1798. Arrested as a student in 1923, he was sentenced by the Russian government to internal exile but was allowed to leave the empire in 1829. He spent the rest of his life outside Poland, mostly in France. After a number of years teaching literature in Lausanne and then in Paris, he left poetry aside for a more active life. He died of cholera in Constantinople in 1855 as he attempted to organize a Jewish legion to fight against Russia and the Crimean War. It's too old place. We're going to begin. Then with the early poem to which Mickiewicz gives the title Romanticism. It is, like Kostanowski's lament, centered on the human reaction to its untimely death. But in this case, it's an overly distraught girl, Karusha, crying out to her beloved, now already dead for 2 years. Some points of contrast show the difference between Romanticism and Classicism, if not directly to the Enlightenment. Not only has Karusha not sternly striven to conquer grief, she has gone far beyond but merely seeking relief in tears. Kostanowski in Lament 19 finally sees her surely in a dream. Has Karusha, rather, could she have encountered her lover's ghost? If it's not clear that there really is a ghost in Romanticism, there clearly is one in Mickiewicz's great poetic drama, Forefather Z, centered on some parts, or centered as some of the parts are, on full practices associated with All Souls Day. Kostanowski gets some consolation from the dream. Karusha, from her experiences, seems not to have done so. We want to focus, however, on Mickiewicz's final stanzas, theoretical more than narrative, and less focused on Carusha herself, just so we don't forget about her. There's a picture of her on the one side, but here's the passages I want to look at. To her dead lover, speaking aloud, she stumbles and falls. In her anguish, she calls and gathers around her a crowd. I hear what they're saying, and I too start praying. Thank God it's got out of her senses, shouts an old man with a learned air. First my eye, then all my lenses, show me that there's nothing there. The ghosts are found all in tales at the end. Believing in them's intellectual sin. What fools you are, as rank as treason. Let's wish to stay against man's reason. Is the girl loves, I make reply. A fact that no one dare deny. Faith and love are more discerning than acutest lens or deepest learning. Your dead truths, though they're sharp and louder, stars as mere sparks, the world of power. They give to miracle no part. First have, then listen to your heart. Surely the poet's rebuke to the obsessively empiricist old man is justified. So, if Mickiewicz does not provide a satisfactory resolution of the problem of grief, perhaps that's only because his primary aim was rather to articulate a larger romantic worldview. Mickiewicz was undying fame and enduring importance did not come there primarily from the poetical skill with which he responded to heartless enlightenment and empiricism. It comes from his having become the voice of the spirit of an East deprived of a state. Not so much from his romanticism per se as from his patriotism, a theme with connections to romanticism, but connections which are not time to elaborate. Can we see in Carusha's emotions an analogous, can we see those emotions as analogous to the love of country shown by Polish peasants who rallied to Kosciuszko's colors in the desperate resistance with the partitions of 1794? In an adoration of that of the rebels of the anti-Russian revolts of 1830 to 1863. Patriotism is quite explicit in Mickiewicz's Grażyna and Konrad Wolodarz, emphasis on the importance of resistance to the enemies of Poland, or more precisely, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. What to think of Wolodarz is a difficult question. Wolodarz disguised his Lithuanian identity in order to become head of the Teutonic Knights, then fighting the crusade against the still pagan Lithuanians. Then he betrayed them in battle. Is he an heroic model of how Poles resist Russian oppression, fighting like the fox in the Blonde's epigram? Caleb and Kochmian argued, I don't want Poland won at the price of honor. Other Poles found the poem a source of inspiration. Wolodarz became Novodero, said one of the insurgents of 1830, the assault on the residence of Frank of Constantine. But Mickiewicz think, Poles don't make articles in the Silver Tail again, and not always have room for objections to replies. And I thought perhaps his best loved work is his uncontroversial Contadeus, which one critic called Poland's national epic, the last Virgilian epic written in Europe. Whether it's exactly an epic depends on one's definition of that genre. Mickiewicz calls it a tale, his story. Although it is a long work with a kind of cultural centrality that characterizes epics, it does not address the basic and eternally given problems of love, death, and God. They are sometimes seen as essential features in the epic. What it does is to offer a nostalgic look, note the subtitle, The Last Judicial Authority in Lithuania, at a cultural milieu that was already disappearing in the years of the work's setting, 1811, 1812. It looks at that culture's customs and foibles with nostalgic, aggressive passages and everything from Polish coffee to Polish mushrooms. Here's a few lines from the Afterwalkers. I got Wilson Gorlaw then put on the put them swatting. Then I want to read. Then sometimes when lions of vengeance cease to roar, and trumpets hush, and armies are no more. When the last enemy shall make his dying cry, be down to the world's give liberty. And when our eagles in their lightning glide on brave Bolesław, boundaries shall light, can eat their fill of flesh, and drunk with gore shall fold their wings to rest furthermore. Then shall our knights without leave, then our knights without leave shall be crowned and cling aside the swords. We sit around unhardened. The world shall envy them at last. And when they hear a scene of the past, then they shall weep upon their father's pain. A mother shakes the tears shall leave none stain. For us inviting guests in every client, from the beginning to the end of time, there is but one place, and this planet full where happiness may be for every pole. The land of childhood, that shall I endure as holy as the first one, as the first love becomes pure, unshattered by the memory of mistake that one deceitful hopes can never shake. Bring the changing tide of life cannot unnate. How gladly I was great and thought those lands where I was seldom wait all with my hands, the lands of childhood. Everywhere the road is a meadow, and the flowers we bought were sweet and fair, but heartfully was one inside, and what the useful heat. Eat. So that leads into a little fragment of some love videos. Now I want to move on to Cyprian Narvid. Narvid, poet and dramatist, but also painter and sculptor. There's a couple of his paintings set on it. Self-portrait. Was born in 1821. He went abroad and studied art in 1842, but before long became rather a political immigrant. So apart from one brief visit in 1846, he never returned to Poland, living the rest of his life in Italy, Germany, the United States, and France. Krzyżanowski wrote of him, he was condemned to travel his thorny and solitary path of life, quite unknown. Or, if noticed, I misunderstood him often scorned. Not until 20 years after his death was he to achieve what he vainly aimed at in his life, for only then did his works find readers able to understand them and to appreciate his merits. He lost it. Unfortunately, much of his poetry is hard to understand and harder to translate than this many other poets. What makes him so difficult? Nikolai Glinsky offers some answer. Carl analysis and perplexing syntax, but also the fact that he raises issues difficult in words, deep reflections and very philosophical insight. What's up in his poetry, notes, was firmly rooted in classical and religious traditions, and he meditated, sometimes enigmatically, on the sense of history and artistic creation. English went on to say of him that he was the most intellectual poet ever to write in Polish. So perhaps it's not surprising that among those who appreciated his merits was Karol Wojtyła, and that a few years ago a statue of him was erected in front of the Catholic University of Woodley. Here's one of the ways in which he shares some of the concerns of John Pope, and quoted from the editors of the website Culture PL, which was worth looking at if you're English and Polish culture. I guess if you wouldn't be here. We get to see what else you can find there. Anyway, they said in Promethean, Narvid presented his program of a new Prometheanism, which extols labor in general and labor that incessantly produces beauty in daily life in particular. Narvid describes this concept as lying in opposition to romantic Prometheanism, which he deems a mythology of rebellion, struggle, and extreme action. The poem offers reflection on the function of art in public life. Narvid underlines the special significance of the visual arts, which in their essence involve labor, including the applied arts, which he sees as adding beauty to the daily life of the common individual. So that's those headers. Despite the general challenges of understanding his work, in addition to the poems with which I started my lecture, only two examples of his lyric poems, both of which will make a connection to last month's evening. In the first, we get a repetition of Levels' connection of patriotism and universalism. For your freedom, for ours. So, if you never asked Sobieski as he rode to Vienna, what is fatherland? He would have answered, it's the place where it is most pleasant to rest and not to die. And there's a readiness to live and a readiness to toil, wherever the fight for humanity is most valiantly waged. Like those moral principles, King John led his army beyond the borders, despite the law, just as Napoleon did with the French. The reason is, an old man who never lived in a fatherland whose happiness was not just one part of the happiness of all humanity. All the grandfathers and fathers of the Republic of Poland understood the Polish question thus. The second passage I want to read connects to last month's music. Norman thought highly of Chopin. In his Prometheus, he called him our foremost artist, adding, I like his Polish dash, that racy glow, there's no sad motorwork, seeming an romantic thing. One of his most highly regarded poems, Chopin's Path, begins with a recollection of a visit to Chopin in Paris. And I have time only for the final stanzas, the description of another event. In September 1863, insurrectionists attempted to assassinate Fyodor Grafenberg, then viceroy of the kingdom, by throwing bombs from the windows of Warsaw's Zamoyski Palace. That was unharmed, but part of the plundering of palaces or reprisal. Among the objects destroyed was the piano on which Chopin had given his first public concerts, thrown out of the window onto the street. But here, I've just before beginning the lecture, I found a new translation. Well, it's better than the one that I put in the handout, so I'm going to read that from here. And you can find it on the World Wide Web, but yeah, look hard and thin one. So you look. But look, no, Frederick, here is Warsaw with strange sparks glittering among the stones under the fiery star. Look at your parish organ. Their hearth is home. They're the patrician houses as old, they say, as our commonwealth. They crowd around the pavement cobbles, deaf and gray, and Siegmund's sword pierces the clouds. Look and see how the Cossack horses swarm through the alleyways and streets, the swallows that before the storm. In front of the regiment, it's neatly formed, 100 by 100, and heat comes from the palace of the fire. It dies down, it does down. Then it flares new, and through eyes half shut, I see a widow lined up with her mournful brows, divided by rifle butts, half blinded by the smoke. Is it a coffin that I see? Through the columns of that balcony, they lift it, then it falls and falls. No, it's a piano. That instrument, which before the insurrection sang raptured songs for Poland at the heights of her history's all perfection, till it lands the transfigured wheelwrights, it crashes to the cobbles at the intersection. Behold, all the noblest thoughts of man are trampled down by furious fools, and ever since the world began, so is everything that stirs the soul. How like the body of Orpheus, by 1,000 passions for the bits, all of them wailing, it's not us, while they gnash their teeth and stick. And what is life for you and me? Let us entomb the doomsday dirge, as we repeat, rejoice, future grandson. The stone death cowls groans, the ideal has reached the street. This is a picture someone drew of the apartment in which the piano set before it was filled in the ground. It was doctors. So, let's move on to the 20th century. We must confess some preference for the use of the more traditional poetic forms that I find as Koferansky and the aromatic chorus. Perhaps, however, that's only a matter of personal taste or orientation on my range of appreciation. So I want to spend the last part of my talk looking at the poetry produced by some 20th century poets. Russian poet and Nobel laureate Joseph Brodsky said that the most extraordinary poetry of this century, in the 20th, is written in Polish. American poet Edward Hirsch wrote in an article from the New York Times that the greatness of Polish poetry at the end of the 20th century has much to do with its philosophical and ethical seriousness. It's come to be admired for its immense intellectual sophistication, its lucid rejection of tyranny, and its humane and democratic values. You will have to write, Poland's poets are metaphysical poets, forced to become historical ones. While they cannot help being aware of the history inflicted upon them, they nevertheless have remained most keenly interested in exploring the nature of reality at even deeper levels. meditating on life's essences. Ruth Franklin wrote in the pages of the New Republic of Poland, produced three of the greatest European poets of the last half century. So I want to conclude by looking briefly at the work of those three poets, as well as that of Wojtyła. Perhaps I don't need to say anything more about Wojtyła than that he was born in 1920, attended the Jagiellonian University with an intention of studying literature in 1938. Otherwise, later became a bishop, first of Krakow, then of Rome. He continued to write poetry as time allowed throughout his life. I'll read an excerpt from his long poem, Thinking of My Country, now, but if I'm some time for a few lines from another. It is book about his predecessor, Dr. Kemp in my final lecture, the one on Polish saints. We had a good sample of Wojtyła from Father. Maybe I'll just read the first lines here. When I think my country, I express what I am, anchoring my roots. And this is what the heart tells, in the frontier ran from me to others, embracing us all, putting past older than each of us. And from this path, I emerge when they think my country. I take her into me as a treasure. I also live wondering how to increase, how to get wider, measured to that space it fills. So, let's move on to Czesław Miłosz. Miłosz was born in the Russian Empire in 1911 in a village that's now in the center of Lithuania. He began publishing poetry in 1930. He spent the war years in Warsaw working for the underground press. The war's end, he entered the diplomatic service of the People's Republic, but quickly becoming disillusioned with communism. He defected from his post as cultural attaché in work in Paris in 1951 and spent the next 40 years outside of Poland, first in France, then in the United States. In addition to his poetry, he wrote The Captive Blind in 1953, then modeled Isabella in 1955. Like Mickiewicz before him, he spent a number of years teaching Slavic literature. English kept at the University of California at Berkeley, publishing the thorough history of Polish literature, from which I've already quoted several times. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1980. The committee cited as its motivation the fact that he, with uncompromising clear-sightedness, voices man's exposed condition and a rate of severe conflicts. He moved back to Poland after the fall of communism and died there in 2004. To be sure, not every Pole has liked Miłosz's work. The communists, of course, did not, but some people at the other end of the political spectrum did not like him either. His love of country did not meet their standards. They thought that he was an example of the man and the Catholic. Miłosz, however, once said, if I were asked to say where my poetry comes from, I would say that its roots are in my childhood in Christmas carols and the liturgy of Marian and Vesper offices in the Bible. Shortly before he died, he wrote Pope John Paul that over the course of recent years, I wrote poems with the intent of not abandoning Catholic orthodoxy, and I don't know how they turned out as a result. I'm asking them for words confirming my attempt to reach the goal that we both share. John Paul replied, "You're right that the object of your concern was making sure that you're not abandoning the Catholic orthodoxy in your creative work. I'm certain that such an attitude of a poet decides what happens. In this sense, I'm happy that I can confirm your words." After his death, his confessor stated that he left the world provided with the last rights, reconciled with God and the Church. In a work called Confession, Miłosz wrote, and I think there's some deciding how he books, but I'm flawed and aware of the desiring greatness, able to recognize greatness wherever it is, and yet not quite, only in part, clairvoyant. I knew what was left for smaller men like me, a feast of brief hopes, a rallying on the proud, eternal tracks. Lecture. As a second sample of his literature, I'll read carnival poem he wrote in tribute to John Paul II. We come to you, men of Greek faith, so that you might forefather with us the example of your life and liberate us. So they can't quite wait, sugar. liberated from anxiety. About tomorrow next year, your 20th century was made by the names of heartily tyrants who led the annihilation of the rapacious states. You know what's happened. You taught hope for only Christ is the Lord in these little places. Foreigners could not guess whence came the hidden strength of the novels from Margarita, the prayers and prophecies of poets who money and progress scorned, even though they were the equals of Kent's waited for you, so the Jews would not take their nouns or an orbiting the 2 centuries and not start their vast story. Okay. And they're able to point. You're with us. Let me with us henceforth when the forces of chaos raise the voice and the honors of truth lock themselves in churches and only the doubters remain faithful. Your portrait in our homes in these days reminds us how much one man can accomplish and how sacred works. I must confess some misgivings about the last stanza, which, although I think that it can be given Orthodox interpretation, seems to me also to be particularly susceptible to more problematic reading. Perhaps the contention between him and a certain kind of Catholic explains both why he wrote this, though I so-called particularly dislike this work. That's this. Next is beginning Herbert. There's the philosophical dimension of modern Polish poetry comes through particularly clearly in the poetry of Zbigniew Herbert. Born in Lviv, he fought with the underground military unit during the war. Unlike most of the other authors I discussed, he lived most of his life in Poland, although he did spend a few years in Ireland in the United States. During his early years of writing in particular, most of his poetry was written, as they say, from the drawer. His poem, Jonah, after giving a brief account of the biblical Jonah and the dangerous mission that Jonah first tried to avoid, turns to an imagined modern counterpart. Herbert Shem Leviathan in the poem, I think, refers to human society, the composite of all individuals somehow gathered into one powerful being, of which we're all at risk of becoming agents. A modern-day Jonah falls into the water like a rock. If he hits a great fish, he has no time to decide. Rescued, he acts more cunningly than his biblical counterpart. He does not undertake the dangerous mission the second time. He grows a beard, far from the sea, far from Nineveh, he trades in cattle and antiquities under the false name. The agents of Leviathan, let themselves be bought off. They have no sense of a destiny. They're the officers of chance. In the immaculate hospital, Jonah dies of cancer, not knowing well who he really was. The parable implied that his life goes out. And the poem was stored does not touch his mortal remains. So, the next example is Sławomir Szymborska, born in 1923 in Western Poland. He lived your entire life in Poland, engaged to not writing poetry and work at and for literary jobs. They don't know applies to any several work that our poetry is characterized by a simplified personal language is unlike contemporary language, often with a little twist at the end, with a striking combination of spirituality, ingenuity, and empathy. Sadly, Szymborska did not at first handle the challenges of living in the dictatorship that was the People's Republic well. Not only did she express her enthusiasm for the construction of the communist model city of Puta, but in 1953, when some of the members of the Krakow Korea land her sense of death, she signed a letter of the local writers' union expressing absolute condemnation of the priests as traitors. By 1957, however, with the publication of calling out Yeti, she began to draw from what she called the difficult experiences of her youth, the lesson that there were better ways to do something good for mankind. She died in 2012. Since my first lecture emphasized, if not the glory, at least the importance of Poland's defense, often military, of European Christendom, he says we at the beginning of this lecture rushed past Norby's comment about the deluges of history and sorrowful children. Perhaps we can take as our final poem, and as a sample of Szymborska's work, the poem that ends from the beginning. After every war, someone has to clean up. They can't straighten themselves up after all. Someone has to push the rubble to the side of the road so the corpse-filled wagons can pass. Someone has to get mired in scum and ashes, puffed, sprayed with splintered glass and bloody rags. Someone has to drag in a bird or prop up a wall. Someone has to glaze a window, rehang a door. Photogenic is not and takes years. All the cameras are left for another year. We'll need the bridges back and new railway stations. Sleeves will go riding from rolling them up. Someone, rubbing hands, still recalls the way it was. Someone else listens and nods while unsevered head, but hurrying either of those nearby is starting to mellow out to find it dull. For mine to the bushers, sometimes someone still unearths trust without arguments and carries them to the garbage pile. Those who knew what was going on here must make way for those who know little, or less than little. Finally, as little as nothing. In the grass of his overgrain causes and effects, someone must be stretched out, blade of grass in his clothes, gazing at the clouds. So the pitch. And so, by way of conclusion, I want to say a few words about Don Poland Forgery and just about talking to that one again. There was a sample from the corpus of Polish poetry, but I, for whom instead of forwarding. The case I made at the beginning of the previous lecture about the value of getting to know a culture and its products requires attention to poetry as well as to history. Many poets give expression to a nation's love of country, of its natural beauty, of its history, and of its peculiar ways. In the case of Poland, this is especially so since the West, the most influential, thought about the particularity of the nation, its history, its 19th century situation, and its destiny finds its clearest reflection in Polish poetry. And as for Catholics, in the latter quoted above, St. John Paul also said that in order to communicate the message entrusted to her by the church needs art. Art must make perceptible as far as possible attractive the world and the spirit of the invisible of God. Art has a unique capacity to take one or another facet of the message and translate it into sounds which nourish the intuition of those who look or listen. It's easy to see that mission fulfilled in the work of poets like Kostanovsky and Norby. For other poets, it's perhaps less obvious, but to quote St. John Paul again, every genuine inspiration contains some tremor in that breath with which the Creator Spirit suffused the work of creation from the very beginning. Jean Paul. I hope that each of you will find something in Polish poetry that suits you. If not, we can at least be glad that we Americans have for us, the Longfellows, and the fireside poets. We can at least begin to duplicate locally what the Poles have done, if not to participate in Polish reverence with their nation's poets, at least to appreciate our own. So,
Thank you so much, Dr. Kemp. That was excellent. We will keep you around for some questions and answer, but first I think we're going to invite Sam and Michał back for another couple of pieces as we wrap up that, and there will be then an opportunity for some questions and answers. Be ready. In that regard, we'll make a few final comments and invitations as well. Thank you.
So now the very different piece by Wieniawski is second movement from the concerto for orchestra and violin. It shows the romantic side of romance. This is not classic. It's a romantic, strictly romantic music. It's not a folk element in it at all. So it's different kind of piece. Slow. Now, very different piece now of music is again coming back to the influence of the folk music, but is written by the modern composer Grażyna Bacewicz, which actually died in 1950s, and she got some of the themes from my parents. She was known Polish composer, and here's the dance called oberek, which means a dance which you go around, swirl around. It was danced at the weddings by young people only, because it was too hard for the older people to keep up. So the older people are sitting around and watching the youth dancing. There's one place in this piece when the boy lifts the girl up, and then she falls down, they turn around the whole room. So this is that kind of happy ending to the concert.
Truly wonderful. Thank you. I had meant to say that Dr. Kemp had assigned this side of the room to be the singers and this side to be the dancers, but we didn't let you know in time, unfortunately. So
We have to remove the tables.
we need to move the tables. That's right. That's right. Well, wonderful. We're coming towards the end of our formal program. Just wanted to say a couple of announcements, especially for those who might be watching online, not live, but we posted the last month's recording, and we've already had more than 60 who have watched it, so that's an exciting thing. We are recording this session, and it will be posted soon. So please, if you missed the first occasion, go back and watch it, because there's lots of things to consider. We are going to be hosting a third and final in our series, and it's looking very much like Sunday, the 26th of January, but we'll confirm that date soon. So stay tuned. That will be focused on Poland and Poland's saints. But I did want to invite Sam just to share a word about the upcoming lessons and carols as well, which you have postcards about. But maybe Sam can give us a little flavor of what that will be like as well. Thank you.